Yeah, and we're going to read the word together. Today's passage is from John 21, verses 1 through 17. If you have one of these, it's 885. That's the page number, 885. Yeah, 885. John chapter 21, verses 1 through 17. This version is hard in the NASB. I'll try my best to read smoothly as possible, but bear with me. All right, John chapter 21, verses 1 through 17. And of course, we have Bibles on the edges of the sanctuary, so if you really do need it, please grab it. All right, let us read together. After these things, Jesus manifested himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and he manifested himself in this way. Simon Peter and Thomas, called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, the two others of his disciples, were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will also come with you." They went out and got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. So Jesus said to them, "Children, you do not have any fish, do you?" They answered him, "No." And he said to them, "Cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find a catch." So they cast, and they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. Therefore the disciples whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put his outer garment on, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards away, dragging the net full of fish. So when they got out of the land, they saw a charcoal fire already laid, and fish placed on them, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have now caught." Simon Peter went up, drew the net to land, full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples ventured to question him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This is now the third time that Jesus was manifested to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my lamb." He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Shepherd my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." This is the word of the Lord. You guys may be seated. For this summer, or throughout the summer, we've been going through the Apostle series. It's our little summer series where we get to take a look at different apostles, see their faith being worked out in their lives, and more importantly, see their characters, their stories, and what they show us about Jesus, and put it all together. And in and through that, we get to see a better picture of Jesus by putting all those perspectives together. It's like seeing a mosaic painting with different little pixels made out of different apostles, putting that all together, and then being able to see a big picture of Jesus. Next slide. There it is, like that. And today we are going to get to deep dive into Simon Peter, Apostle Simon Peter, which you guys most likely have heard of before because he's one of the more famous, more popular, the leader of the group of the 12 apostles. And through him, just as we did in the other apostles, we are going to discover and also be reminded of who Christ is. So we're going to pray and then we're going to get right into it, okay? Pray with me, church. Lord God, we are thankful that you have given us this word, chapter 21 of John. You have inspired it and you have willed it to existence. And we thank you for that because we get to see another glimpse of you, another perspective of who you are. And that in and of itself is a blessing. Thank you for the day that we're having. Thank you for every one of these people that you have brought into the sanctuary to glorify you, to know more about you, and to walk with you. So Lord, Let that be our hearts. And please, I ask you at this moment to be with us, to walk with us, and allow our hearts to be mended and our ears to be open so that we can hear what you have to say today. Be with us in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, I'm going to start off this sermon in a very interesting way. Have you guys watched the movie Hustle? The Netflix basketball movie, Hustle. It's a great one. I don't know if everybody's watched it, but I love this movie. This movie is about basketball. It's a basketball movie. It tells us how things kind of run behind the scenes of the basketball realm. But the story revolves around the character played by Adam Sandler. His name is Stanley, and he's a scout for the Philadelphia 76ers, which means he's going to travel all over the world looking for the best of the best talents internationally, trying to recruit them, trying to seek out basically the next future potential, hopefully superstars of the NBA, bring them into the team, see what they do, right? And the story kind of takes off when Stanley lands in Spain, and the basketball game that he was supposed to go gets canceled, and then what happens is he goes to an outdoor court, finds Bo Cruz, and he's fantastic on the court. Bo Cruz is this guy with he's tatted up, he's lengthy, he's wrecking people in basketball in all sorts of ways. But he's rugged. He's a street ball player. He's playing in construction boots. And Stanley and everybody around him loves him because he's so good. Stanley, seeing that he has huge potential, starts asking, hey, what's his name? Nobody knows. And one thing leads to another, and he somehow gets into Bo Cruz's home. Not in a creepy way. He gets invited in, okay? And then with some convincing, with telling him about all the financial opportunities, what it means to be an NBA player, Bo Cruz leaves his home, his daughter, and his mother to go to the States with hopes to make it into the NBA so that he can provide for his family. And now he's in the States, and Stanley gets to this point where he gets Bo into a basketball game with all these prospects. Other agents are here, and it's important because the owners are here. Some of the coaches are here that are looking out for new people to recruit to their teams. So it's a very important game. And what we find out about Bo is that he's extremely skilled. He can play with these guys. He's good. But as soon as someone gets into his head, as soon as his mentality breaks, his game goes out the window. It's done. And actually, that gets him to a point where he almost gets kicked out of the combine, which is the big tryout for NBA. But that's his situation. So all in all, by this point, Bo Cruz, what we find out about him in his character is that he's extremely talented. He's in the States. He can compete. He can play in the States. He's looking to get into the NBA, but in him is still the old Bo Cruz, the Spaniard who plays in the streets for pocket change. He's a street basketball player at heart. Brash, impulsive, hot-headed, quick to anger. And after blowing that game that was really important that I just talked about, because someone got into his head, he couldn't make anything. People lost interest in him. What Stanley does is he goes outside, talks to his owners. He loses his job, or he basically quits. And then now we're in the scene where he walks back in. The gym is empty. Bo's sitting on the stage because it's a gym. It's a high school gym. And he's looking down. He's looking sad. And what basically happened was Stanley stood up for Bo. The Philadelphia 76ers, their owners thought he wasn't worth it. And and Stanley is constantly asking, hey, give him a chance. I think he's worth it. Get into conflict, doesn't listen. Stanley quits. He's like, fine. So he's basically all in on Bo Cruz. He's committed to the idea that he's going to get him into the NBA by himself. So he's all sad, and you have to say, and as Stanley, you have to say something. You got to give him it's the big coach moment, right? It's the cliche coach moment. And what Stanley starts off by saying is this question: do you love this game? And he goes on about how much he loves the game. Do you love this game? Do you love basketball? Are you obsessed? Because I'm obsessed. And then we get to a point, it builds up and builds up, constantly trying to ask him, do you love this game? Trying to get the love of this basketball game out of Bo Cruz so that will be his motivation to keep going. And Bo Cruz being a basketball player, says it in a really deep voice. Yes. And then, then boom, everybody's like up and ready. He's ready to train. And then cue in the cliche training montage, and everything gets better and better and better. And of course, throughout the process, his anger, his old Bo Cruz, comes out to kind of mess things up. And it almost gets to the point where Bo gets on an airplane to get back to Spain. He's not doing basketball anymore. And then Stanley has to go chase him back down because he found out about an opportunity. And this once rugged street ball hustler who played basketball for some pocket change, well, at the end of the story, will transform to become a refined refined NBA Boston Celtics basketball player. What a story. And as you have probably guessed, we're talking about Simon here. So you would have guessed that by now, Simon Peter is Bo Cruz, or the other way around. Bo Cruz is more like Simon Peter. He came first. Simon was from a small town called Bethsaida. It's a little small fishing village. And he's a brother of Andrew, which is one of the disciples that we got to take a look at. And he's also rugged, hot-tempered, quite impulsive and brash. And he gets called by Jesus Christ to follow him, promising that one day Simon will be called Peter at the end of the day. Peter means the rock. And Jesus promised that he will build the church on top of him, the rock, as the foundation. And he does become this. We see it in the early passages of Acts, right? Apostle Peter will later on in Acts preach at the Pentecost. 3,000 people preaching. I get nervous just preaching at y'all, but imagine preaching at 3,000 people. And all of those people will get the gospel, will come to faith. He will bring down the Holy Spirit, and people go bananas. He also heals people by walking around and having them touch his shadow. He brings a dude back to life. And then at the end of the day, he is indeed the head of the church for the vast majority of the development of the early church. But like the story in Hustle, like Bo Cruz, Simon Peter's Simonness comes back here and there and causes him trouble throughout the gospel, throughout his time with Jesus. His original name, Simon, means shifting sand, which describes one of his biggest flaws that show up throughout the gospel. And as he spends time with Jesus, his heart moves back and forth between him being bold, courageous, and living out the faith, and he shifts to the complete opposite. And we'll see that. His faith will die down. His faith will be blown out. For example, Matthew 14, 22 to 33, that passage was really long. I only took up a little bit of a snippet of it, and you can follow along with me. And most of us know the story. It's the story when Peter is called out into the water to walk on water. Story goes, Jesus commands his disciples to get on a boat and go to another city. So they do it. But within that sea, apparently, a huge storm comes about, goes nuts, everybody's scared. And then all of a sudden, out in the distance, you see a figure walking up. And if you see a figure walking up in the middle of the sea, you will also think that it's a ghost. So they think it's a ghost. And Jesus comes and he goes, "Nope, psych, it's me, Jesus." And then Peter, finding this out and hearing the fact that the figure is actually Jesus, what he does boldly in faith is, "Lord, if you are actually Jesus, then command me to walk on water." Bold, courageous. I don't think I would ever ask Jesus to have me walk on water, right? But after he's done it, after he's actually in the water walking, standing on water, his heart shifts. He does the Simon thing and loses the faith that he had that was keeping him above the water by seeing all the things around him, by seeing the waves, by seeing the rain, by seeing the clouds. Fear gets into his heart, and his faith that was keeping him on the water is extinguished by the fear. And Jesus has to rescue him, saying, "Oh, you of little faith." Shift, right? Pendulum. A spectrum. Matthew 16, when Jesus asked the disciples, who do you say that I am? Peter boldly, courageously, in faith, will declare that he is the Son of the living God. And Jesus commends him for it. He actually creates a little mini beatitude for him. "Blessed are you, Simon. For Father in heaven, God himself has revealed to you who I was." And then, all of a sudden, shift happens. I counted 2 verses afterwards, when Jesus is talking about the fact that he's going to have to die because he's the Son of the living God. Simon doesn't like that. So he will take him aside by the arm, and he rebukes him. And after that happens, Jesus says the infamous line, calling Peter, or Simon Peter, Satan, and telling him to stand behind him. Shifts, right? You have the faithfulness of declaring he's the Son of the living God, and then he starts to rebuke him. And as you're reading the gospel, and as you find these things out, and as you're researching about, as I was actually researching about Peter and Simon Peter and his shiftiness, you can't help but to be frustrated. Like you do good stuff and then you blow it the seconds after, right? And what makes that even more frustrating is the fact that we are actually the same, right? We're in the same boat. We are all Simons at heart. Follow along with me. What is the difference between Simon asking to walk on water in faith and boldness, then in minutes after quickly sinking in fear, seeing all the things around him? What is the difference between that and us? And I am guilty, right? Worshiping here on Sundays and walking out of that door, and the next second we're thinking about all the things that we have to do, all the things that are going to be coming up, all the essays that you have to write, all the tests that you have for students, all the bills that we might have to pay, all the job things that might come up. And having that rule our lives, having that anxiety and the stress be the motivation for our actions. What is the difference between those two? Another one. What is the difference between Simon boldly declaring that Jesus is the Son of the living God, and then turning and rebuking him only verses after? What is the difference between that and us worshiping here, declaring that he's the Son of the living God indeed, and then turning, walking out of those doors, and totally ignoring our calling as Christians, totally ignoring his ways at times, thinking that our ways are better than his? What is the difference? There are no differences. We too are like this. We are Simons at heart, but there is hope in that. We are shifty, yes, but there's hope in it, because if Christ can change Simon into Peter, then I believe all Christians, all of us here, though we are the shifting sands now, he has the ability to change our hearts, change us into the pillars of the church, the foundations of the church. And in Peter's story, to push that a little bit more, to push this hope a little bit more, what happens is when he's first called, Jesus declares from the beginning that Simon will be called Peter. It's not I think you might be called Peter. It's a prophecy. It's a foreseeable future. It's a known future for Christ. That means he will change Simon into Peter. And that's hopeful for us because we will, I think that applies for us too. As Christians, Jesus will come into our hearts, and he will change us, and he will sanctify us, and he will make us into these rocks. And this change, this transformation that we get to see in Simon is the thing that we're going to take a look at today. And in and through these transformations, we're going to see how it applies to us and how it shows Christ and what he looks like in the midst of all these transformations and what that means to us, okay? So let's go right into it. John 21. So imagine with me, John chapter 21 is actually like the post-credit scene of a movie. John chapter 20, the last bit, what's going to happen is he's going to write, all these things happen because whatever, and then these are written so that you guys may believe. Cool. The end. Sounds like an ending to a book. But then he adds this on because it's really, really important. John chapter 21 starts off with the fact that Jesus has already gone through the crucifixion, the resurrection, and has already showed himself to the disciples. All right? Now, Simon, Thomas, Nathanael, John, James, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples all went out to do the only thing they knew how to do: fish. And it's logical. You have to live, you have to have a living, you have to have an income of some sort, and they're probably hungry. So what do? You do what you're best at, you fish. Right? And what we have to take note is this: all the settings, all the things that come up, all the details that come up in John chapter 21 is an allusion, is a parallel to Simon and his crew's first calling, when Jesus first called them into discipleship. Okay? And moving on, and all night, what happens is they don't catch anything. No catch. And as the sun is starting to peer out of the horizon, they see a figure in the distance. Who is that? I don't know. And then that figure starts asking if they were able to catch anything, and they, of course, say no, because their nets aren't empty. And then the figure, interestingly, just instructs them, hey, why don't you try catching on the right-hand side of the boat? And they, for whatever reason, listen. I guess they had nothing else to lose. So they throw it out. So many fish are caught, 153 big fish in total, and they couldn't even haul it in because it was too heavy. And out of all the disciples, the beloved one, John, the author of this book, finally realizes, seeing the signs, seeing the parallels, he finally realizes, oh, that's Jesus. And out of all the disciples, Simon being Simon, brash, impulsive, as soon as he hears that, he jumps off the boat and starts running. And what's funny about this is actually the boat isn't all that far away from the shoreline. So the imagery here is that Simon jumps off the boat, and the boat is actually going the same direction with him. So he's not so far away from the boat, it's actually going alongside of him. That's Peter in a nutshell, right? And of course, what you can imagine is Simon Peter is dashing, he's running, he's basically going at it in the water. And if the water, you're going from the sea, so I'm guessing at least the water is like coming up here. And if you tried like walking or like running in that water, you have to do this Donald Duck step kind of thing. So he's running like that, going at it, sweating most likely, with the biggest grin on his face, with the biggest smile on his face, as if he's like a child waiting, or that has been waiting for his or her parent to come from work. Like a child who is ready to get picked up from school, seeing his or her parents' car, running towards Jesus, because in that running, in seeing him and knowing that that's Jesus on the shoreline, all of the memories, all of the experiences from the past 3 years of ministry, all the life that they were able to share comes up to him. And he's growing, and he's constantly, and he's getting excited. He wants to meet Jesus one more time. But the thing is, he gets to the shoreline, he gets to the beach, and that smile fades. It goes away. He looks down. You see Jesus over there, but he can't look at him in the face because he sees the charcoal fire. You see, the charcoal fire is only mentioned twice in the whole narrative, right? Not this narrative, but the whole narrative of the Gospel of John. It happens in this story and in John 18, when Simon Peter betrays Jesus 3 times. He denies him 3 times. So for Peter, the charcoal fire is a reminder of that moment, that he failed Jesus when he needed him the most. When Jesus was being trialed to die alone, Peter left him. The charcoal fire for him embodies the part of himself that he hates the most. He hates his betraying heart. He hates this shifting heart, unfaithful heart. It's the Simonness of his heart that is being reminded through that charcoal fire. And to make it make it even worse, Jesus is standing right there, having prepared the fire for him, and he's saying, hey, let's have breakfast together. What do you do? The only thing I can relate to is this. If you guys all have seen my car, it has a big dent on it. And some of you guys were in that car when I got the dent. Now, every time I look at the dent, I am reminded of a couple things. Not great things, but a couple things. It's the fact that I messed up in the parking lot. I think I didn't mess up, but I should have been more careful. Okay, that's a whole other conversation. But there was a wreck or a bump. I technically messed up. It also shows different aspects of my time or my life stage during that time. I was poor, so of course that's not fixed. Still not that well off, so it's still not fixed. It reminds me of those things. It reminds me of my times in college, all the things that I had to do, all the work that I had to do. It reminds me of all those things, and it just, every time I see it, believe it or not, even today, every time I see it, it reminds me of those things. Oh, I got into that accident. Dang it. And for Peter, it's probably much worse than that. For Peter, it represents fear, right? Thinking that he's going to make the same mistake again. It represents the fact that he's not good enough for what he wants to be. The thing that he was trying to be was the best apostle. The leader of the apostle was his identity. But obviously, you betrayed him 3 times. You're not worthy of it all. But most of all, what it represented was the act in and of itself, the act of throwing away Jesus for the sake of his own safety. You see, the fire in and of itself, as a reminder, it screams that you, Simon Peter, proclaimed that Jesus was the Son of the living God. You, Simon Peter, proclaimed that you would never betray him. You, Simon Peter, said that you would even follow him to the cross. And what did you do? You denied him. You left him to die alone, the one who came to heal your mother-in-law when she was sick. The one who ate with you, shared life with you, even though you were a mere fisherman. The one that you, Simon Peter, proclaimed that he was the Son of the living God. You denied the one. You denied the one who could ever say, the only one who could ever say that they loved you, or that he loved you, and have every fiber of his being mean it. How do you look at him in the eyes? How do you look at Jesus in the eyes if you're Simon? You can't. And suffocating under his guilt, his fears that his heart might deny him again is just simply an understatement. He's drowning in guilt. He's being killed. He's being torn apart inside of him. And he has to sit through the whole breakfast meal with this. Now, he's all down and he's under so much guilt that he can't even look up. Then all of a sudden, he hears Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Out of nowhere. What Simon at that moment probably hears is this: Simon, the one who declared that I was the Son of the living God, the one that said that you would, die for me, do you actually love me more than these? Your desires to be known, yourself, your well-being, your identity, do you love me more than those things? And all he can muster up to say at that moment is, you know I love you. And what Jesus will say is, if you do, feed my lamb. He hears it again for the second time, exact same question, except for the end part. Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Simon, the second time around, he's hurt. If somebody asks you again, do you love me? You feel that way because you think, does she not or he not believe me when I say, I love you? He's hurt. And more than that, the love that Jesus is talking about here, agape love, is something he knows in his heart, being reminded through the charcoal fire, that is something that he cannot live up to. So all he can say is, you know me. I love you. And Jesus says, tend my sheep. He hears it for the third time now. Peter is wounded. He's grieving. He's bleeding on the inside. Because Jesus is not talking to Simon, the son of John, anymore. He's talking to Simon, the one who denied him 3 times. And he asks, do you love me? And he says, you know everything about me, Jesus. You know what I did. You know how I'm feeling. Of course I love you. Yes, I love you. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. And then Jesus will go on. He predicts the way Simon will die. His arms open wide, old, which represents crucifixion. But at the end of the day, he will be glorifying Jesus. He will be glorifying him. And he tells him to follow him. And that is the narrative that changes Peter. That is the narrative that turns Simon's heart into Peter-like heart. The question, do you love me, is the thing that guides that change. So we're going to take a look at it. The interesting part about this question is that Jesus never asked about the actual deed of betraying him. He never asked, why did you betray me? How could you? What have you done? You dare call me the son of a living God and then betray me 3 times? Like, he never goes with that. But he simply asks, do you love me? And this overly simple question gets to the core identity of Simon. See? It's because the question asks a fundamental question about love. Do you love me? About what our love is and where our love is placed. And this is shown in the question in and of itself. Do you love me? So today what we're going to do is we're going to break it apart. Right? We're going to take a look at, do you love me? And then we're going to take a look at the end, me part. First, let's take a look at the love part. The question gets to the heart of the issue, and the issue is beyond his wrongdoings, his wrong actions, past consequences. It's way beyond that. It's about Simon's heart, Simon's love. The question is, in another way, what is our love? What is his love? And in love, we know a couple things, right? We know that if we love one thing, we can't love another at the same time. We can't serve 2 masters at once, remember? What our love is also is where our satisfaction and our identity, our fulfillment comes from, right? For instance, for Simon, his love was about himself. What he loved was being looked at, validated, affirmed, and justified. That's why he acts the way he does. He's always first to do things. He's always first to say the right answer. It's all about having that love. It's all about getting love, being loved. That gave him his satisfaction. And ultimately, it was all about him, his ways, his security, and his satisfaction. And we can see this in examples that we kind of went through before. When Simon rebukes Jesus Christ and is called Satan, he rebukes him for not being the son of the living God that he imagined him to be. What Simon had in mind is this Messiah figure that will come down with an army and overthrow the Roman Empire and redeem the nation of Israel. But what did Jesus say? I am going to die for these people. So because that's not in line with his purview, he takes him aside and he honnes him, he rebukes him. When he boldly walks on water and then quickly sinks in fear, he was looking at Jesus himself, That in and of itself is faith, to be able to look at Jesus himself in front of him, standing on water. But he couldn't help but to put the thoughts about himself, his security, the thoughts about the dangers of this situation before the fact that he was looking at God himself. So when he pays attention to all that, the fear of losing his security, the fear of losing his life becomes greater than the fact that he's looking at Jesus himself. That's what he thinks. Lastly, Peter would deny and act like he had nothing to do with God, nothing to do with Christ, if he was going to be in danger. His love for himself causes him to leave God, to die alone. And once again, are we not in the same boat? At least once or sometimes in our lives, we're going to get to a place where we put our love and on ourselves. For students, grades, achievements, where you get into school. For college students, where you get your internships, your future jobs. And for parents in the room, maybe it might be where your children goes to go get their education, their success, their achievements. We put our loves in that and find satisfaction in it. We too are like Simon, aren't we? So when Jesus asks this question, do you love me? He's asking, is your love in yourself or do you love me? And throughout the gospel, we see that it is not in Christ, but it is in Simon himself, and it is in ourselves most of the time. And if this results in us becoming a shifty sand, if loving ourselves results in us becoming like Simon, then it makes us question where we ought to have our loves in. If loving ourselves, having the love upon ourselves causes us to be Simons, and we're called to transform into Peter, then it causes us to question, what should we love? Then the next question tells us, do you love me? What he's asking is this, is your love in me? Am I the source of your satisfaction? And most importantly and most concisely, am I your love? What changes Peter is not the amount of love that he gives to Christ. It's not the way he loves Christ. It's the fact that the object of his love is Christ. It is when Simon Peter finally turns his heart and places his love, his identity, his satisfaction on Christ. Then, and when he lets Christ answer to what he longs for the most, for his satisfaction and fulfillment, to be loved and to be known, that is when his heart changes. And when that is done, Simon's desires of being loved by the world, his need to seek acknowledgement, fades away because he realizes that Christ has and has been loving him all this time, has known him all this time. One more time, he has known him and he has been loving him all this time. Even through all the denials, even through all the betrayals, even through the rebukes that we give to him, God has been loving us all this time. This is what changes Simon into Peter. He was seeking love, but realized that the God of the universe had already loved him from the beginning. And church, that is love, and that is grace, okay? And this passage from the beginning is drenched with Jesus calling out that he has been loving Simon Peter, even through the betrayals, and that he has known Simon Peter, even through his denials. It screams, I know you and I love you in and throughout. See, Jesus comes, he shows up exactly where Simon would be, back fishing. That's what he defaults to. He knows that about Simon. Remembering his first calling story, he recalls that, and he builds a parallel scenario so that they will be able to understand that he is Jesus. Calling Peter by his previous name, Simon, screams, I know you. I know who you are from the beginning. I know what you used to be. I know all the times that your hearts have shifted. I know it all, but I'm still here. The charcoal fire, he doesn't smash a thing of wrath on his forehead. He subtly reminds him with the breakfast. He gently reminds him. And him asking questions about his love, knowing that his inner deepest desires, doing surgical guidance for him to find the answer, find life in it through all that. That is love. And most simply, when we take two steps back, the most important thing, the most loving thing is that Jesus was betrayed. He still died and resurrected for Simon's sins. And then he decided to appear in front of Simon afterwards. Because he loved him. This is Christ's love. And if you can't believe that, then church, I encourage you to take a look at the cross. Because that screams it. That is him screaming at us, I know you and I love you. And it was this character of Jesus, the manifestation of God's love, God's grace, as the love of God that changed the character of Simon Peter. And when this Jesus becomes Simon Peter's object of love and realizes that he is already loved beyond measure, it becomes his foundation. He can't help but to root his identity in it. He is satisfied. He's filled. There's now nothing that he was looking for, nothing that was going to shift his attention because he has it all. He lived for the one who has already loved him and is going to love him. That's the change. That's the difference between Simon and Peter. And we see this change act out in all of Acts, right? Then what does Jesus call him to do afterwards? After that change, he says, tend my sheep. This kind of lets us know then what is our call once we are transformed? What are we to do then? It's in direct response to loving him, Jesus commands Peter to tend his sheep. And what Jesus is then calling us to do is now that you are filled with my love, rooted in my love, go love others. Go pour the filled cup that you have in your hearts and share it and give it to others. Give it to those who need it the most. And we can do this full-heartedly without any fear because we have already been loved. We are loved. And it all makes sense when 1 John chapter 4, 19 says, we love each other, one another, because he loved us first. This encapsulates our reality that we are going through today, this transformation. We love because we are loved first. Or because he first loved us, And isn't that what we're here to do, church? As a family who are loved by Christ, we are to love one another, and we are to share our filled hearts with one another as needed. Because let's face it, we all do need it at times. And as a family, We're also to remind one another, tell each other the fact that we are indeed loved. Whenever we feel like the world is against us, we have to remind one another that we are loved by Christ. And we have it all. And in doing so, we spur one another up to serve one another and to actually be the church that we ought to be and we were called to be. And we ought to finally remind one another that we cannot change without the love of Christ. That love that has been going on before we even realized. The love that will still be there, even through the worst, even when we betray him, and even when we deny him. You see, in the movie Hustle, I'm going to go back to this movie Hustle, we get to see Bo Cruz, like Peter, go from this rugged street ball player to an actual refined, professional, trained, composed NBA player. But through it all, he stumbles, right? His anger gets to him. He blew the first game away. We talked about that with all the prospects. And he almost hurts and assaults one of the fellow players that he was playing with because he got into his head. Then that causes him to fly back to Spain. That caused him to give up on basketball. But at the end of the day, in conclusion, he got to the NBA. And throughout this process, I think we can all say his training was really important. His determination was extremely important. Chances, luck, yeah, that plays a big role. But his love for the game, yeah, that's important. But the one indispensable part about this movie, his success, is that Bo couldn't have done it without Stanley being there. He couldn't have done it without Stan. He was there all along with him. He paid for everything. He paid for the hotels. He paid for all of his meals. He paid when everything was falling apart. He was there when everything was falling apart. He was there when Bo messed up the most, when he was insulting Stan for lying about certain things for the sake of his own future. He was there. He never left. And that, in and of itself, the fact that he was there all along was the thing, and is the thing that changed Bo Cruz into this new refined NBA player, Bo Cruz. And we see it at the end of the movie when Bo is dabbing up Stan at the end in the NBA game as an NBA player. Stan is with the 76ers still. Bo Cruz goes ahead and joins the Boston Celtics, and they're matching up, and they meet one another. Oh, I'm sorry. And then what we see is that Bo got a new tattoo. So all of his tattoo used to be on his right arm, and he saved his left arm. And he left it bare for the sake of his father, to remember his father. But on his left arm, he has a new tattoo. It looks like that. And what it is it's a tree on it, representing that he is strongly rooted into what is on top, which is Stanley's motto. Don't ever back down. To Bo, Stan becomes his father figure, not because of all the things that he's done for him, not all the payments that he's made for him, but it's because Stan actually loved Bo like his own son. And Stan's character, don't ever back down, his life song, the essence of who this character is now something that is part of Bo forever, ingrained in him, rooted in him. And I think this is actually a beautiful analogy of what Jesus' love is to Peter. It is the foundation in which he is rooted on. The love of Christ is Christ's model. And Peter is strongly rooted in it. Simon becomes Peter when Christ's love becomes Peter's motto, when it's ingrained into his heart. And it is only when we put our hearts in his love and ingrain that upon our hearts. And once that becomes our foundation, once that becomes our solid structure for our lives, and once we actually do realize that he has been loving us from the start, through everything that we went through, that is when the transformation happens. So church, to wrap up, a couple questions. Is this love of Christ part of us, individually and as a church? Is it ingrained in you? And most importantly, do you love him? Let us pray. Lord God, we are faced today with